Red suit, white beard, a belly that shakes like a bowl full of jelly. That might well be your image of Santa, but there's more to the big man than that. He's one of the most instantly recognisable figures in Western culture. Children write lists expectantly for him, and his magical reindeer, sack of toys, and love of a mince pie and a glass of sherry have become the stuff of legend. But where did our familiar view of Father Christmas, or Santa Claus, originate? And how historical is his familiar appearance? With the holiday season fast approaching, here we bust three of the most common misconceptions about old Saint Nick. It's a ritual as closely related to the season as carol singing and tree decorating, penning a wish list of presents to send to Father Christmas. Yet, despite today's image of him as a kindly giver of gifts, unless of course you've been badly behaved enough to deserve only a lump of coal, this hasn't always been the case. Long before he became a man pulling a laden sleigh, Father Christmas was instead simply the personification of the festive season, a figure of feasting and fun who can be traced back to at least the 15th century. There are other traditions that are even earlier, and more on that shortly. And far from being a jovial filler of children's stockings, this figure was emblematic of a celebration that was much more about adult merriment. The festive season was about food and drink, carolling and carousing, and if there was a moment dedicated to gift-giving, that fell not on Christmas Day, but at New Year. Even then, however, it wasn't until more recent centuries that presents became the carefully considered and fondly bought items we know, and sometimes struggle with, today. In the Tudor court, for instance, gift-giving was, as you might expect, an act of political performance. Taking place in a very public ceremony on the 1st of January, courtiers were expected to shower their monarch, members of the royal household, and high-ranking nobles with just the right present. All of these items were duly recorded by the master of the jewel house and his assistants too. So spare a thought for this kind of pressure when you're frantically searching for just the right gift this Christmas time. Santa Claus and Father Christmas, surely just two names for the same jolly old fellow? Well, not quite. As I've said, Father Christmas began in Britain as more of a symbol of festive cheer aimed far more at adults than children. But his transformation into the bearded figure we're more familiar with today began in 1616, when playwright Ben Jonson introduced Old Christmas, or Old Gregory Christmas, in Christmas, His Mask. Old Gregory was a long-bearded character dressed in old-fashioned clothes and accompanied by children named after seasonal traditions like misrule, carol and mince pie. When the Puritans tried to abolish Christmas in the 17th century, and eventually succeeded, around and during the Civil War, royalists leapt to defend Old Father Christmas. In some pamphlets, he was even depicted as being on trial. But despite looking more recognisable to today's festive figure, the character here was still much more about adult revelry. But everything changed with the Victorians. As Christmas became a family-centred celebration, Father Christmas needed a makeover, and that's where Santa Claus comes in. Across the North Sea, the Dutch celebrated Sinterklaas, based on St Nicholas, a 4th century bishop known for his generosity and miracle working. Legend has it that he once dropped bags of gold down a chimney to aid a household in need, and the gift landed in a stocking hung to dry on the fireplace. Sound familiar? News of these Dutch legends crossed the Atlantic to America. An identifiable turning point came in 1809, when writer Washington Irving wrote of St Nicholas flying over the city in a wagon and climbing down chimneys with gifts. The idea stuck. A year later, a poem featuring Sancta Claus appeared in the New York Commercial Advertiser. Some think that writing like this was part of a greater attempt to create a friendlier version of Christmas, one without the rowdiness that had emerged in New York at the time. And this developed until, gradually, Santa Claus replaced St Nicholas, eventually becoming more synonymous with Britain's Father Christmas to create the figure we know today. Coca-Cola invented Santa's red suit. It's a story that pops up every year, but it's not quite true. It is true that Coca-Cola's adverts, starting in 1931 with Haddon Sundblom's iconic illustrations, made the image of Santa in a red coat with white fur world famous. But they didn't pluck this look out of thin air. So taking this original inspiration, the image of Santa Claus had been evolving well before Coca-Cola's adverts. Throughout the late 19th and early 20th centuries, artists and writers in both Britain and America depicted Santa Claus and Father Christmas in a range of costumes, including green, blue and brown, as well as red. Early Victorian illustrations sometimes showed him as a lean, almost gaunt figure, while others portrayed him as a jovial, bearded character dispensing good cheer. In Britain, Father Christmas traditionally wore a long red habit, trimmed with white fur, and a hood, which contrasted with the American Santa's shorter jacket and cap. By the end of the 19th century, the image of a plump, white-bearded man in a red suit had become increasingly common, thanks in large part to the widespread influence of Thomas Nast's illustrations and the popularity of Clement Clarke Moore's poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas. Nast's drawings, which appeared in publications such as Harper's Weekly, gradually established the familiar features of Santa's costume, including the fur trim, broad belt and boots. So while Coca-Cola certainly helped to popularise the jolly red-suited Santa we see everywhere today, the look was inspired by centuries-old traditions, not just clever marketing. So with the 25th of December approaching, let's raise a glass to Father Christmas, Santa Claus, jolly old St. Nick, and the rich cultural and historical traditions from which he originates. And a Merry Christmas from the both of us too. Hope you have a peaceful and happy holiday.